Freljord, forest, freezing cold. Xiao Bei struggles. In the deep forest, towering trees. Every step crunched in the snow. Footsteps echoed loudly. Once everything was ready, the brown tent was unfurled. Xiao Bei aimed for 2 large trees to set up the tent properly. The bone-chilling wind needed a firm support to avoid becoming prey in the wild. The tent ropes were pulled taut. Tent stakes plunged with a thud into the snow. The snow continued to fall incessantly. Luckily, finally got inside. With weather this cold, what everyone hopes for most is a tiny fire. A rusty stove, full of traces of time. This iron stove has been with him for years. Though a bit archaic, Xiao Bei uses it like second nature. Work done, now it's time to rest. Outside, it was pitch dark. The firewood rack was put in place. He kept stuffing wood into the stove. A flickering match lit the stove. In this cage, he felt unusually warm. Boil water, warm himself up, add more wood, and the fire blazed stronger. Don't be fooled by his young age. He's a master chef. In the wilderness, he still enjoyed delicious and nutritious food, full to the brim without needing to stroll around. He tidied up his bed quickly, crawled into his sleeping bag, and dreamt sweetly until morning. Who knew that in the middle of the night his house would collapse? The blizzard was too much. The tent was flattened by the snow. Xiao Bei had no choice but to crawl out and try to salvage it. Tonight was truly a calamity. The next morning, the snow danced again. Xiao Bei crawled out of the ruins. The chimney was all bent out of shape. Seeing that the snow hadn't stopped, he decided not to hold out any longer. So, he packed up and dismantled the camp at lightning speed, migrating to a new location in the ice and snow. Wandering for hours, coordinates unknown. Aimlessly, the guy found an empty spot and landed. Amidst the falling snow, he reclaimed a new piece of land. The old crumpled tent was laid out. Living outdoors all year round, this guy makes pitching a tent a trivial matter. Pitching a tent difficult, he does it effortlessly. The tent was pitched in the blink of an eye. Every corner was solid. Afraid of the tent collapsing on him like last night, still, the old stove, Xiao Bei, installed it in the new tent again. Done. He ducked into the tent. Outside, snow was fluttering again. Xiao Fei brushed off the snow, clinging inside the tent. The small fire then flared up. Skipping meals, he immediately got into his sleeping bag. Outside the tent, snow was pattering down. It sounds quite chill. Meeting Xiao Bei again, he was already carrying his backpack and moving on. This weather really gets him going. Preparing to set up his camp for the night. It's sunny, but the temperature is still freezing. Luckily, the wilderness tent is gradually taking shape. The joints were secured by Venus locks. The tent ropes were also taut. Once tidied up, they could move in. Snow quickly whitened the tent roof. After setting up the stove, he carried a saw far away, aiming for some dead trees. In no time, he carried back a pile of firewood. Because the stove was tiny, he had to painfully split firewood again. The lamp was bright. Inside, it was as bright as day. The stove was also happily puffing out smoke. He took out the ancient steamed buns from a few days ago to steam. That was all there was for dinner, although the tiny fire burned slowly, and snow had been falling continuously for the past few days. The temperature was still biting cold. Little Back quickly inflated the air mattress. Then he burrowed into his sleeping bag, sleeping like a hibernating bear. In the densely snow-covered forest, snow had been falling heavily for 3 days and 3 nights. Abe moved step by step like a snail. Finally, a windy, grassy spot was chosen. As soon as the gear was put down, work began immediately. Snow was still falling like soybeans, and Abe trudged back and forth in the snow for 3 hours. Snow was still falling like soybeans. Abe trudged back and forth in the snow for 3 hours, until the thick layer of snow was completely compacted. Don't think that's it. The layer of snow underneath was still very thick. Abe continued to move the snow back and forth, mixing it with the accumulated snow. Only when the ground was cleared. The tent slowly appeared. In sub-zero temperatures, Abe shivered uncontrollably. With trembling hands, he unfolded the small tent. Pulling out the poles, the tent was already covered in white snow, like a military commander. He assembled the poles perfectly. The poles were perfectly aligned. For him, this was a piece of cake. In a flash, the small tent became a cute little mushroom. For extreme cold camping, courage alone is not enough. You need expert survival skills. Setting up the tent is the same. Every step must be precise. Otherwise, that night you'll become a snowman. The tent has shielded us from wind and snow. Bay is free to decorate the interior. Priority no. 1. Install the stove. Though the stove is tiny, but just by lighting the wood, it's enough to warm the whole tent. The chimney is over 2 meters tall, so it must be tied down securely. Once that's done, he went to collect firewood. Here, it snows all year round. Trees surrender to the snow, falling over. Abe found it effortless. Pushing aside the thick snow. Firewood, plenty fallen and free. Bay grabbed a saw. Sawing vigorously, he cut it into pieces for bundling. This firewood is only enough to start the stove. It's laughably little. Want to survive the night? Must find more, urgently. Snow is light as a feather, but piled up, it's tiring. The tent is at risk of collapsing. So, the snow needs to be cleared regularly. After finishing outdoor work, he quickly ducked into the tent. The small fire crackled, so warm. Shoes and gloves were soaking wet. Time to dry them quickly. Spending the morning in the snowy forest, then setting up the tent in the afternoon, almost took my breath away. It was truly a sweaty ordeal. Fortunately, there's a warm stove to heat up food, and even get to sip some sake. A BY, this life is so chill. Feeling full and overjoyed, ABY frantically shoved firewood into the stove. The fire must blaze fiercely. Tonight, here, the temperature is over -20 degrees Celsius. If the fire isn't kept strong, little BY will become an ice pop. Waking up as Olaf in the morning is for real. So he continued, chopping firewood, and diligently cleared snow around the tent. The snow just kept falling, refusing to stop. So staying another night is a pipe dream. So he packed all his belongings, ready to bid farewell to this land. Xiao Bei officially joined the Snow White's land club. Dragging his gear for 2 hours straight, he found a spacious spot and stopped abruptly. He stopped, took out his snowboard, and lovingly made friends with the surrounding snow to set up a stable shelter. Then, Xiao Bei quickly pulled out the tarp. As soon as he opened it, snow rushed in like a market. This time, he was fully equipped, even with a fancy, inflatable tent. Holding the pump, he pushed a few times, and the tent slowly inflated like a balloon. Although it wasn't as grand as Auntie's tent, in Xiao Bei's eyes, this was the fanciest villa of his entire exploration career. After the campfire was done, Xiao Bei happily entered his private villa. The first order of business was to set up the stove. The chimney protruded from the pre-calculated small hole. Just as he finished tying the wind-resistant ropes, a snowstorm roared in with a noisy welcome. These situations were so familiar to him, he could do them with his eyes closed. Next, as if digging for treasure, he scoured around the base of a tree. Digging more than a meter deep, he stumbled upon a bottomless wood mine. With this weapon, even a faint flame would blaze. Outside, it was pitch black. Snow was still falling heavily. The tent was warm as an oven. Even as a novice cook, he was busy. Sausages and vegetables were just quickly added with white rice, and dinner was served. With a full stomach, he immediately crawled into his sleeping bag, intending to get some sleep. But life wasn't a dream. He woke up in the middle of the night to clear snow from the roof. The next morning, he woke up unfazed, having been buried alive by snow up to his waist overnight. Before he could eat, he hastily packed up and left. On the road, the snow raged again, making it even harder for him to breathe. Reaching a secluded spot, Xiao Bei got to work again. He decided to use 2 large trees as wind to prevent the wind from blowing it away again. He tied the ropes to the tree trunks first, then pulled the tent taut with the other end. Although the inflatable tent from last night was fancy, Xiao Bei felt something was off about it. This classic tent, this one suited him better, even though it took more effort. But doing it yourself is still the most satisfying. Xiao Bei installed the stove super fast, top-notch craftsmanship. He knows these things like the back of his hand. But where would he get firewood to use every day? So he carried a saw to look for some around here. Mind you, only picking up trees felled by the storm at their base. The sound of the saw echoed throughout the mountains and forests. And the weather was acting up terribly. Sometimes calm, sometimes raging with storms. But Xiao Bei was safely inside, and had already started the fire. Just keep stuffing in the firewood. The warmth spread so incredibly satisfying. The snow outside the door. He scoops right into the pot. Once melted, there's water for boiling vegetables and all sorts of things. Spices, save as much as you can. A little stewing, and you'll immediately have a specialty stew. As dawn broke, Xiao Bei got up. The tent was about to collapse. He had to clear the snow quickly. So he diligently shoveled snow again. He's off again. The tent was just pitched, and Xiao Bei has a new private estate. The tent is tiny. It can't be big. Luckily, it has a roof. Otherwise, the snow would be my tent mate. shivering from the cold. I must assemble the stove at lightning speed. This beloved stove that has been with me for years has to come everywhere. The snow wind is going crazy, hitting me straight in the face. If not for my expert tent pitching skills, this bird's nest would have flown away. Zhao Bei went to gather firewood. The storm even provided fallen trees. Upon returning, I found the tent was about to fly away again. I frantically brushed away the snow and retied the tent ropes as solid as a rock, sawing wood with one hand, clearing snow with the other hand, multitasking. It's so cold that I just want to turn into firewood and crawl into the stove. The snow wind is swirling around. It's all the same road. Soaking wet, shivering cold. Finally, the stove is lit. He quickly supplied firewood, making the fire blaze fiercely. It's evening. Close the gate. Hot tea, first. Leftover rice from the day before yesterday. Add a bit of meat. Reheating it turns it into a hearty dinner. But today, I must reward myself. Roasted sweet potatoes sprinkled with sugar, absolutely delicious. It looks so tempting. Outside, wind and snow. So, no need for a stroll. Lying down on the bed. Good night, everyone. Snow fell for 3 days and 3 nights. Our Bei stumbled along, struggling to crawl up the mountain. Saw a clearing. Didn't say much, just marked the territory. Decided to camp here. The snow is still falling. So beautiful. After wandering for a while, it was time to take out the tent and set it up. Spread out the tent flat. Stake it down firmly. Finally, support it with a center pole. A simple tent was born. Just about to tie down the guy lines securely when a gentle north wind blew. Almost blew the scrawny Abbé away. Work's done. Abbé opened the door and laid out the mattress. Pulled out the stove and assembled it, like playing with toys. Although snow had stealthily crept into the tent, Abbé just ignored it. He threw the stove in. Then he cut a hole in the tent. To install the chimney, how daring. Abbé must have forgotten to check the almanac. Going out now is a bit reckless. Since he's already here, Abbé can only grit his teeth and go all out. In the snowy forest, tree branches bent like an old man's back. Abbé seized the opportunity to quickly gather. Before long, a huge pile of firewood. The guy went out and forgot to close the door, so the tent was filled with snow. Never mind, let's carry the wood first. He also had to keep an eye on the security of the area. After a lot of effort, he managed to light a small flame of hope. His frozen body also started to warm up. The guy casually scooped up some blood from outside, then put it on the stove. Before long, the blood was boiling. It was already completely dark. After drinking water, he prepared his evening feast. Main course, cereal, accompanied by fatty wild chicken. After just a few minutes of heating, Abbé had a hot dinner. After eating, he made his bed. Then snuggled into his sleeping bag. Wind and snow outside, who cares? So he slept soundly until morning. It was unusually quiet outside. The tent was still as solid as a rock. Abbé jumped up. The smell of breakfast was already everywhere. He needed to eat his fill, to have the strength to drag on further. Snow loved to play tricks, covering the ground white in an instant, making Abbé traverse the forest, gasping for breath like an old buffalo thief. After walking for 4.5 hours, he couldn't take it anymore. Gritting his teeth, he prepared to set up a new tent. As usual, he stomped his feet to claim his spot. Even though he was heavily out of breath, his tent pitching skills were still top-notch. The frame just clicks into place, and it's done. The tent gradually takes shape. This tent looks complicated, but it actually is complicated. Yet, in Obey's hands, it was as easy as pie. He still set up the stove first. Clearing snow, he pulled the chimney out of the tent. The chimney was towering. He had to tie ropes to prevent it from falling. The weather was calm, but you never know when the wind might strike. Once finished, Obey put on his snowshoes again. To gather firewood for tonight. Obey had no time for sightseeing. Shoveling snow, gathering firewood. By night, the tent was covered in snow. But Obey wasn't afraid. He took out delicious food, heated it up with cold water. A simple dinner, enough to fill his tiny belly. Before bed, Obey cleaned up the chicken blood again. The stove was also full of firewood. All done, good night. But life is not a dream. A snowstorm hit, the tent collapsed. So Obey had to get up in the middle of the night to save the tent. Struggling all night. Obey was exhausted, as if he'd just fought a battle. Completely worn out. In the white world of snow, Obey was like a lone hero. Through the biting cold wind, the stove was full of firewood again. All done, good night again. But life is not a dream again. A snowstorm hit, the tent collapsed again. So Obey had to get up in the middle of the night to save the tent again. After a night of struggle, Obey looked like he had just finished a battle, completely worn out. In the wondrous snow-covered land of winter, Obey transforms into a lone hero, cutting through the bone-chilling wind, heading straight into the pathless deep forest. Just then, the snow whipped like knives. The unpleasant weather made his steps heavy as lead. Going deeper in, Obey stopped at a clearing in the forest. He put his backpack down and began to commune with nature. Obey professionally marked his territory. The soft snow underfoot gradually hardened, creating a solid base for the upcoming tent setup. But the snow kept falling heavily. He had to pull out the tarp first to protect his belongings. Then, Obey unfolded his ultralight tent. In this snow-covered land, his movements were swift, yet very artistic. For Obey, the professional player of the wild mountains and forests, these tasks can be done with his eyes closed. Like a seasoned pro, the frame goes up in a flash. According to the script, Obey threads the frame into the tent. His hands and feet stiffed from the cold. Obey is still perfectly precise. Each pole in its place. The tent gradually takes shape. It looks substantial now. He securely fastens each buckle, so the fabric clings tightly to the frame. Now comes the critical staking down part. In this land of wind and snow, every detail must be precise to prevent the tent from flying away. Once everything is finished, the snow villa is complete. Snow is now falling heavily. Obey quickly moves his luggage into this silver nest. Setting up the tent was hectic. His hands and feet stiff from the cold, he's still craving the warmth of a stove. So he installed a superfast stove. For ventilation and safety, Obey placed the stove next to the door. The chimney thus shot straight out. He fixed the chimney support frame, then attached an extension pipe, long at the end, to be safe. Bay even carefully tied the chimney, making sure it wouldn't run away. Once everything was done, he sighed with relief, as if he had just completed a mission of the century. But Bay wasn't done yet. He also had to set up a tent inside the house, an extra layer against the cold, just in case it got too cold. Now, dusk was falling, and inside and outside the tent seemed to blend together. Bay had finished setting up his Simmons bed. Though simple, it was soft enough for a long night. The firewood was neatly stacked. The fire flared up with a sizzle. The cold room finally warmed up, otherwise it would have become a freezer. After finishing inside, Bay went outside, hanging frog lamps on each string. Not only to avoid tripping at night, but also to turn this place into a 5-star resort. Abai finally reached paradise time. Don't let Bay's youth fool you. Eating is his #1 priority. No one can stop him. Fresh, perfectly marinated beefsteaks. Colorful vegetables are already settled in the pot. To add more flair, Abai even got 2 lively lobsters. This whole pot, it makes your mouth water before it's even cooked. My mouth is watering. The fire crackles joyfully. The beef slowly goes into the pot. Sizzle. The aroma fills the entire tent. Abby skillfully flips the beef, frying all sides until golden brown. Covers it. Simmers it a bit more until just right. By the warm charcoal stove, the delicious dish is fragrant. Slicing, tender, juicy beef, served with incredibly delicious vegetables. This is truly a late-night masterpiece, enough to awaken every foodie's soul. The next morning, the hut was covered in white snow. The north wind howled, and snow slid off the tree branches with a swoosh. At this moment, Abai was already awake. He restarted the fire, allowing warmth to spread. The Castian pot was again full of delicious food. Abai loves freedom. His feet can't stay still. He only stops to gather momentum to continue. Backpack on, hitting the road again, ready for a new adventure. Every corner of the tent was meticulously cleaned. Not even the snow on the roof escaped. Setting up the tent was hard. Taking it down must also be gentle. As soon as the pegs were pulled, the tent deflated. Lying crumpled on the ground, he gently rolled up the tent, as if bidding farewell to a life, leaving the scene empty, as if no one had ever been there. Spotless, without a trace.